Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. Let me get my screen up here. Okay, let's get going. So I really enjoyed listening to that last panel discussion, and certainly my hope here is to be able to talk a little bit of language that the business people can understand and a little bit that the technical people can understand as well, because I do think it's very important that we speak that common language so that we're all driving towards, you know, the same outcomes. And today what I want to talk to you about is the role of the network as part of that digital transformation, and how do we empower innovation. You know, for a long time, we've kind of just thought of the network as something that we, you know, plug a blue cable into or connect via Wi-Fi. And, you know, it does provide us connectivity, but really the network can do so much more, and it can really help power some of these business innovations that we've been discussing. And I want to talk to you about that secure edge to cloud transformation. And what I mean by that is not moving from the edge to the cloud, but how do we actually secure the entire network all the way from the edge where we live and work to the cloud, where increasingly a majority of our applications and workloads are living. So let's kick things off. Some research that we've done at Aruba, and I think this is no surprise to people in the audience, is that, you know, lots of applications are moving to the cloud. Enterprise workloads, obviously a lot of our applications that we use, you know, from a consumer perspective, and, you know, many enterprises are leveraging, you know, cloud as well to improve the branch experience, or, you know, the micro branch experience these days with a lot of remote workers or people working in serviced offices. So with that, you know, change to, you know, to the cloud per se, you know, we look at that digital transformation as being made up of, you know, much more modern cloud applications. And some of those applications may live in a private cloud as well. It's not exclusively a public cloud. However, those applications are modernized and leverage cloud principles. In order to do that, we need that modern cloud infrastructure, again, whether it's in the public cloud or in private cloud data centers. And again, one of the big advances and one of the key topics I want to talk to you about today is how we leverage the SD-WAN and cloud security technologies to enable effectively what's known as SASE, or the Secure Access Services Edge. So let's break that down a little bit and see what that means. So just to take a bit of a step back in terms of the way that we've built networks previously and security for those networks is, you know, we've typically had our headquarters, our data centers, and even our branches, and we've built a big ring around those to stop, you know, anything getting in and only the things that we want getting out. We've typically connected our sites with private MPLS networks, which, you know, can get very expensive and a little bit inflexible, and even challenge for availability, especially if you're working across multiple countries, not only in the Asia Pacific region, but maybe globally. Puts a lot of emphasis on a sort of single point of security, you know, typically being your perimeter firewalls and the like. And one of the things that we've heard a lot over the past 12 months is how VPNs have really not scaled in a lot of environments to handle so many users that are working from home. So, you know, as all of these applications and workloads, you know, move towards the cloud, and that move is gradual. That move is not, you know, happening overnight, but that move is gradual. What we need to do is start, you know, thinking about that security transformation, or that security strategy in a slightly different way. And so, you know, as apps move to the cloud, as users move around, you know, offices, their home, you know, in transit, we need to really think about how do we, you know, ensure that security stays as close to the user as possible, whilst not becoming a barrier for them to access the applications and the data that they need. And I think it's important to understand as well that it's not just users that are connecting to networks. Increasingly, there are more and more IoT devices connecting to the network. And so if we think that the challenges that we've had previously with guest and BYOD devices were a bit of a challenge for security and for the networking teams, IoT is a much bigger challenge just because of the sheer volume of those devices, the amount of data that they're generating, and unfortunately, in a lot of cases, the weaker security that ships with a lot of especially low-cost consumer IoT devices that often find their way into the enterprise. Now, you obviously would have heard a lot of people talking about, SASE and zero trust networking, and there are obviously a lot of vendors out there trying to solve these problems. And so I wanted to give you our perspective on, how we approach solving some of these, edge to cloud security transformation challenges. So there are certain companies that obviously were born in the data center, and so the perimeter firewall style model where you put everything through those very, very smart, very intelligent, very capable next generation firewalls and apply all of your security there. As the transition to cloud is happening, it's like, well, let's put those firewalls in the cloud, as it were, and send our traffic through there. There are other technologies and solutions and companies that have been born in the cloud. And in those scenarios, the recommendation to achieve SASE and zero trust is, well, send all of your data to our points of presence in the cloud, and at the cloud edge, we will essentially apply all of the security policies and routing and all of those sorts of things. So, install an agent on your laptop or on your iPhone or your tablet or whatever that might be, and send all of the traffic, to the cloud. And whilst both of those both of those solutions have certain advantages, they also have some disadvantages. And so, what we think at Aruba, we were born at the edge. We're born at the edge where people sort of live and work, and where the most amount of data is actually generated, be it by users or be it by IoT devices. And so, by being at the edge, we think we're in a perfect position to orchestrate and steer traffic and applications and users to the appropriate security technology, be it in a data center, on-prem, in the cloud, built into the networking technology itself, and really be in that key strategic location to be able to determine, ultimately the quality of the experience, as well as the security of that experience, independent of where that user is. And so, we really see that edge as the pivot point for that WAN transformation. And so it doesn't mean that your traditional data center or perimeter security solutions are no longer valid, or that you have to move all of your security to some of the cloud security partners. What we're really trying to do is have the network be as intelligent as it can be, so that it can choose the best way to deal with different types of users, applications, data workloads, and also not just do it at the point that the user connects to the network, but doing that in an ongoing basis, so that you're continuously evaluating the security posture, the applications that are transmitting, the users, the IoT devices. You're looking at behavior. You're not just sort of checking once and then allowing all of these users to, continuously and data to continuously pass through the network. So I mentioned IoT a little bit, and I just want to touch on that because IoT devices are very, very different to our enterprise, laptops and tablets and mobile devices. In many occasions, sometimes the IT department doesn't even know about some IoT devices that the facilities team or the global real estate team want to install for, smart lighting or air conditioning or whatever that might be. And I think that is only, a higher risk in branch office scenarios where there's typically less technical oversight, certainly less technology people or security people. And so IoT devices are a really big challenge, because IoT devices need to connect to local applications and workloads, but they also need to connect to internet applications and workloads. So how can we leverage the edge to help secure our IoT devices? And, as we talked about earlier, I can't load an agent onto my, temperature sensor or my smart clock or whatever, or the smart HVAC system. I can't load agents typically on all of these devices. So how do I provide the level of security, not just for the device, but also for the data that it is transmitting or receiving in order to do its job. So by having this intelligence at the edge, we're able to very easily identify the types of devices that are connecting, check if it's a internal asset that we're comfortable, or that we know that's inside our asset register. Is it an unknown device that we've never seen on the network? What's it trying to do? And so by leveraging that intelligence, what we can do is we can steer that traffic, and we can segment that traffic and send it, either through the WAN to a private data center or to a public cloud application, or we can break it out locally if it's a video camera that's talking to a local video server, for example. So that ability to steer traffic, segment traffic, and leverage either on-prem security that's built in, or working with some of the cloud security partners, you can mix and match what's best for that particular type of a device. Now, one of the other things that we like to talk to or I want to share with you is that, the move to SASE or to zero trust network access is not a push a button and one day, you've suddenly incorporated this. I think as was discussed in the panel as well, it's important to be able to pick specific projects or applications to solve, and be able to perhaps narrow the scope and make sure that you do something right and get that piece right before moving on to the next piece. So again, as I've talked about previously, let's look at branch security and how we can potentially improve the experience and the security that's happening at a branch. So by leveraging, SD-WAN technology, you can choose to take specific users or applications and gradually break that traffic out to either directly to applications in the cloud that you trust, such as say Office 365 or Zoom that we're hosting this conference on. You can steer certain types of traffic to cloud-hosted securities, like some of the partners that you've got there, or you can go directly to applications such as your Salesforce and Dropbox and the like. But we know that a lot of companies still have internal applications that run on their own private data centers. And so there's no reason why you can't continue to send some of that application traffic either across an existing MPLS link, or potentially across a new broadband link that may be a little bit cheaper and highly available. Or what we're seeing now increasingly as well is people using LTE or 5G if it's available as a redundant link for certain types of connections. And so, this flexibility means that you don't have to send all of the traffic to one location. You don't have to have manual configurations of, different routes and different policies for all of these different types of applications. You can start configuring what we refer to as a business intent, which again talks to that speaking the common language between the technical and the business people. The intent is that trusted applications, we can go directly to the cloud. The business intent that certain applications have a very high SLA, and so we want to make sure that they are always have a certain availability of bandwidth or of performance. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a feel of how you can, step through a secure access services edge, at your own pace. Now, one of the key concepts of zero trust networking is the ability to segment users and segment devices. And a lot is talked about segmenting traffic at the local branch or at headquarters, as it were. But we think it's really important to have a model that allows you to segment not only locally at the branch, but across the entire WAN infrastructure, across all of your branches, all of your offices. Now, if you only have a single campus or an office, then you're only worried about the local segmentation per se. But we know that many of the the customers at the conference today have multiple locations, and some of those locations may be workers that are now working from home, and their home is effectively a micro branch. So you can see here on the right-hand side a very common way that firewall policy can be defined. But again, you can see we can very easily segment different traffic and ensure that it will only communicate with the host that it is intended to. So in the case of that point of sale system, it will go through the SD-WAN fabric and only communicate with the transaction processing server in the private data center. Similarly, at the second branch. If we now look at our video surveillance, they too will be steered out of that local branch connection, but in a completely isolated segment and routed and tunneled to the video server that sits in a different data center or a public cloud, as it may be. And maybe you're dealing with contractors. So these people are not directly employees, but they have to access certain private applications that live inside your data centers. So in this scenario, what we can do is, again, steer that traffic securely through the SD-WAN fabric and ensure that it can only access those HR applications. So, this is a way that we can maybe start, sharing some common language. It's not the full solution. There's certainly a lot more than just the network aspect of things. But hopefully, this can be a really good foundation, because ultimately, again, the network is the first point of connectivity for a lot of users and devices, whether that network is in the corporate office, in the branch office, or, as we've discussed a lot, potentially at home. So let's try and run through one of these examples again, and maybe this visual representation will help people to visualize how you can start transforming from that more traditional closed perimeter security model leveraging private links to something that is much more flexible, much more dynamic, and based on the business intent for that particular user or application. So directly at the branch, the ability to segment east-west traffic built into the infrastructure. The days of constructing lots of VLANs and lots of ACLs to try and deal with all of these different types of devices, that's the old way of doing it. There are much smarter ways of doing it, and it's really all about role-based access control and providing segmentation across those roles. Now, let's have a look at, wanting to access, very trusted and common applications such as, Google Workspace or Office 365. In those scenarios, there's really, no need to provide additional security inspection to that traffic. There's application level security, built in, given we're accessing these via a web browser with secure SSL. And, Google, Microsoft are trusted companies with lots of front-end security. So we can confidently steer that group of applications, from trusted partners, trusted public as a service companies to go directly out. Now, we may have certain applications that we actually do want to go through our own data center where we've got additional, inline inspection capabilities of traffic, because we're dealing with a lot more sensitive information that we want to apply additional, security controls to. And in that case, we may steer that traffic through our existing next generation firewall or an IPS system that sits inside our data center or sits inside, one of our hubs, as it were. But we also, have the ability to leverage some cloud security partners. So maybe for your guest network or for your BYOD network, you say, all of that is just internet access only. So we're going to leverage a cloud security partner to ensure that those users that are just doing internet access are not at risk from malware and from different sort of clickbaits or attacks that may be coming down from websites. So that traditional web-based security that a lot of you are familiar with. If you want to extend that even further, maybe you will leverage, CASB or secure web gateways in addition to the URL filtering and the like. So hopefully this gives you a bit of a visual representation, as I mentioned, of how we can deliver those different business intents for those different types of applications. Oh, and sorry, I forgot to mention the remote user also fits into this model. And again, if somebody is working from home, maybe if they're going directly to Office 365 or Google Workspace, we will steer that application traffic directly. But perhaps we want to put it through our cloud security partners in order to secure traffic that's coming from a home user's home broadband connection, going out to public applications or private applications in the data center. So again, hopefully this gives you a visual representation of the way that we can leverage the network and the network's intelligence to securely steer applications. And to be honest, to try and make the network as invisible as possible for the end user to deliver on those business outcomes with security baked in at that network level. Now, I wanted to just run through an example of a customer that recently, leveraged this capability to try and really reduce the complexity of their environments, dealing with 700 branches, all connected via private MPLS, and with a bit of inconsistency in the end user experience. A combination of existing on-premise security technologies, as well as some cloud security partners that's part of their digital transformation. So we were able to really reduce, 3 or 4 hardware components in every branch down to a single SD branch gateway that was able to provide, secure connectivity for the wired and wireless and provide that intelligent steering for all of those applications. It meant a significant reduction in cost from the MPLS perspective, and ensured that they could still leverage their big investments in their on-prem firewalls, as well as some of these new cloud security partners that they had. So great success story, and we'd certainly be happy to talk to you further on, how we can help your company if you're in a similar situation or perhaps a slightly different one. So just to wrap up so that we can get onto our Q&A, the modern branch, WAN transfer and security transformation are joined. You need to look at this holistically. The network can play a really, really vital role in enabling these business innovations and the digital transformation. Because let's face it, people connect to the network in order to access applications. IoT devices connect to the network in order to transmit data that powers your business or gives us intelligence and insights into what's happening. And so the smarter, the more flexible, the more dynamic that we can make the network from the edge to the cloud, the more that the network will not be a barrier to those digital transformations, and hopefully save you some money along the way, not lock you into a single, vendor or carriage technology. So you won't be forced to use, just 4G or 5G or just MPLS or just broadband. You can leverage multiple of those technologies at a single time, and it let the network choose which one of those is going to be best to deliver on that business intent. If you want to read a little bit more about it, we invite you to download our white paper on, successful WAN transformations. There's a lot of great content there, some of which I've spoken about today. So, feel free to scan that QR code or reach out to the team if you want a follow-up. So, With that, we'll move to our Q&A section. I wanted to thank you for the time speaking here. I hope you found that useful, and I'd be happy to take any questions from the audience.
Thank you, Carlos. And we have a few questions here. Firstly, first question, can you hear me? First question is, anyone would like to post in more questions, please click at a Q&A button there. First question we have is, everyone would like to move to cloud, but data residency is one of the challenges. How to tackle it if the main cloud provider are not available in your country?
Yeah, look, that is a big challenge that we deal with on a daily basis. And even if there is cloud providers in individual countries, the data governance laws are potentially different if you're dealing with customers that come from international or from other regions as well. So I guess what I would say is having some intelligence in the network is going to allow you to be able to choose which applications you can leverage that exist in public clouds, and which solutions you still have to use locally. We are seeing also an increasing number of companies that are providing private cloud solutions for their for workloads. So whether that's the Amazons and Microsofts and Googles of the world, or potentially some more local providers. I wish I had an easy answer for that one. I can certainly let you know that at Aruba, we're constantly working on building out more and more private private cloud infrastructure in each individual country. We have one in Singapore, as a few in the region. It's a good question. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Yeah. Then the next question is, Carlos, is there a compromise to network performance by eliminating MPLS? Can you share some of the successful use case?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I guess, firstly, I want to say that SD-WAN is not about eliminating MPLS. SD-WAN is about giving you the flexibility to choose the best carriage that's available in that location and at that point in time as well. So MPLS has certainly been very reliable, but also very, very expensive. And I think it's fair to say that broadband technology has improved dramatically, and also that LTE, 4G, and in the future 5G will provide a lot more of a reliable connection. So I do think that you have to look at every single individual situation. There's no one size fits all, but maybe let's just say in the example that I gave earlier, where there was 700 branches, maybe 100 of those branches don't have reliable broadband, and so they still require MPLS. But that means that for 600 of those branches, you can choose to have a business grade, broadband connection that is highly reliable, and with the business intent overlays that ensure, that certain applications or users will always get that priority access to the applications. You can still save an incredible amount of money whilst providing that same quality of experience. So yes, you can absolutely achieve that quality, but as with everything, you have to understand the environments that you're deploying into. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you so much, Carlos. Yeah, we have a couple of questions coming in now, but I think due to time restriction, we will answer one last question live. But if Carlos can stay behind a little to answer the rest of the questions on the Q&A by typing in later on.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, so we have Kenneth here. He's asking, in our cloud adoption journey, the security team has been concerned that implement the level of security we want a multi-cloud enterprise architecture might be very, very expensive. That is, having to deploy DDoS, IDS, etc. in each of the CSP. Can Aruba help simplify this?
Yes, look, certainly if you have a very complicated environment with multi-cloud solutions, that can complicate things. But I think the ability for the network to steer traffic towards your preferred partner means that you don't have to be dependent necessarily on having a gateway in front of every cloud. You potentially can have some of that at a centralized location. And I think it's important to understand what is the most sensitive and assets that you have, be it people or applications that you try to, that you really want to protect, and maybe make sure that the investments that you're making from a security perspective, are focused in those areas. I think, as I mentioned earlier, applications like Office 365 or Google Workspace, I don't think that you're getting any real value by sending traffic to that through an IDS or an IPS system. Those applications have very, very, very good security fronting them up already. So I think those types of security, built-in security in Microsoft, Google, and many others, I think is really mature these days. So I think it's about segmenting off the applications that absolutely don't have any of that built in because they're in your own private data centers or private VPCs, I should say, and leverage the great security capabilities of the Microsofts and Amazons and Googles of the world.
Thank you for the answer. And I think maybe there's one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure. You're the boss.
Yeah. Since we all working from home, right? I think we can cut a little bit short on our lunchtime. So the question is, compare on-premise or cloud service or both integrate, which most better to secure data?
I think what I want to try and get across with the presentation today is that it doesn't have to be a one size fits all. There is no one that is absolutely better or worse. I think the power that we have today is flexibility and choice and being able to choose what's fit for purpose. So for example, if you're a company that just last year maybe refreshed all of your perimeter firewalls, well, you're going to want to leverage that investment. You're not going to want to throw it away and then suddenly do everything via a cloud security. And so I think it's important to have that flexibility to be able to have, some applications or some traffic, leverage your existing investment, be it on-prem or in the cloud. But, what this does enable you to do is to start that journey of consolidation, so that the network fabric and the WAN fabric becomes simpler. As I mentioned in that example, the customer with the 700 branches, they had a router, a firewall, and a UTM in each of those branches, and they were able to collapse that into a single appliance without compromising on the security. So it is a journey. But it's not one or the other. Remember, edge to cloud is not moving from the edge all the way to the cloud. It's about securing everything along the way, because the edge is where we ultimately, start off all of our connections.